reconditioning that we can do is block that negative self-talk and replace it with something positive.
Hey, Millionaire University Nation. This is Brien Gearin back with you on the Millionaire University Podcast, if you have been with us before. But if you haven't, this is your first time around here, we hope you stick around and like what you hear. It's a pleasure to have you. And today, I am really excited to introduce my guest, Mike Oster. He is a Brigadier General in the United States military. He's a business owner. He's a father. He is a mentor, a speaker, an author. There isn't much that he isn't, but he is spending time with us today to talk about the sweet spot in his life and in his teaching, which is a positive attitude. And we're going to relate that to business building. So without further ado, let's introduce and welcome to the classroom, Brigadier General Mike Oster. Mike, thank you for being with us and thank you for your service. I think that goes without saying, but I always want to say it because it makes me feel good knowing that there's guys like you out there defending us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Brien. Thanks. It was a privilege to serve. I had a great career and feel very blessed. Provide
us some context. Let's hear the Mike Oster story so we can get to know you a little bit better before diving in.
I was very privileged, as you mentioned, to serve in the military, and I actually served for 36 years. That was not my intention when I joined. I joined the Army National Guard when I was a senior in high school. My father was a Korean War veteran, and he had been in the service. And I can remember growing up as a kid and watching the slideshows of his service, him standing by a tank and hanging out with his buddies, and just big smiles and a lot of reminiscing when he would tell us those stories. And so it made me want to serve. But I watched my siblings go to college, so I wanted to do both. I found this thing called the National Guard. I thought I would do 6 or 8 years, get some college benefits, be able to say I served, and somehow, some way ended up going to officer candidate school and then eventually ended up full-time, did 36 years, had an incredible career, a couple of combat deployments in that, learned a ton about leadership, mentorship, working with people, worked for some great leaders, worked for some not so great leaders, learned from all of them, and tried to grow through that. And then that's all great. I have a ton of knowledge and experience from that. But what I'm most proud of is I'm married to the same woman that I've been married to for 35 years. We have 4 adult children. 2 of them are married, and they've both given us one of them gave us 1 grandchild and one gave us 2. So a competition between them for favorite child of ours. They keep popping out grandchildren. And then a couple more that we'll see there. Our last one's going to graduate from college this year. So super proud of being a husband and a father and a Christian and all the things that go along with that. So I've been pretty blessed. And now we own a couple of small businesses and do my speaking and coaching and training. Wrote a book that we were able to get to a bestseller that just came out on Audible, by the way. I'm excited about that. And so just really excited about where I'm at and the privilege that I've had to serve with the people that I did, learn the things that I have, and I want to continue to give back to others now.
Absolutely. Can you give us a little details on some of the businesses you're involved with?
So, the one business is the speaking, coaching, training, and everything I talk about is about a positive attitude. In fact, the title of my book is It Starts With Attitude. The subtitle is How to Live in a Place Where Excellence Becomes Your Average. I talk about different types of fitness in that. And years ago, I was at a military school for a year, and I went to get a massage, and because I feel like that's preventative maintenance on your body, and kind of fell in love with the concept of massage envy. And eventually, to make a long story short, a couple of years later, we opened a franchise in the town that I live in and then bought a franchise that currently existed in another town. So we own 2 locations of massage envy. So that's a secondary business. Then we have some real estate investments as well.
What is it about living in that excellence in order to make it that average? How do we get there?
I think it boils down to, we know we're supposed to do those kind of things. We know we're supposed to have a positive attitude because we're more effective when we have one than when we don't. We know that we're supposed to strive for excellence is what we've been told. But nobody really tells us the things that we have to put in place in our life to make sure we can continue to do those when life gets hard. And that happens. I mean, sometimes it's family that gets, and I say in the way because there are obligations and responsibilities that come with that. Sometimes it's a full-time job that gets in the way. And those things are going to continue to happen because they're part of our lives. So that's going to be a hurdle that we have to know is coming. It's the ones that we don't see coming that give them pause or make them take a step back. And instead of growing through that challenge, they feel like they're going through that challenge. And so I think the first thing for me is perspective, is knowing that things are going to come at you and you can either go through them or grow through them. You can see them as issues in your life, or you can see them as opportunities in your life. And so making a choice on the lens through which you see your life happening and the things happening around you is the first thing. A great example is yesterday I was traveling home. I was out in Arizona for a conference and some speaking opportunities. I was traveling home yesterday and I had delayed flight after delayed flight after delayed flight. And a lot of people get very upset and angry. And I'm not saying I enjoyed those things happening, but issue or opportunity. I had a lot of things I needed to get done. And if I would have gotten home when I was supposed to get home, other things would have jumped up. I'd have started doing laundry, or I'd have, started doing something else around the house, or I was just stuck in an airport with my laptop and the ability to do the work that I needed to do uninterrupted. So issue or opportunity? Well, opportunity, because by the time I got on the plane to come home, I had the work that I really needed to get done today done yesterday. And so it's really about that. But I could have just gotten angry and been mad and yelled at somebody on the airlines and those kind of things. That's helping nobody. And me in particular, right? I'm going to be a worse version of myself. But by kind of embracing it, seeing it as an opportunity, I start to continually live where I'm living at the best level of myself. And that doesn't mean that it's not hard, or that it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it, because there probably were even times yesterday where maybe I was sliding a little bit to the negative side, but it's just trying to strive for that all the time. And I'm just doing that to be the best version of me. I'm not competing against other passengers and how they react. I'm just trying to be the best version of me. So to me, the first step of all of that is making sure the perspective through which I see my life happening is one of positivity and opportunities rather than issues. And that is a huge foundation. If we can just get there, that's 80% to me. Everything else, setting goals and having values and identifying your purpose, those will get you the other 20%. But the first 80 is you just deciding how life is coming at you and be the victor instead of the victim, the old saying. And that to me is the biggest part of being positive and living where excellence becomes your average.
I think that's the perfect mentality that we can also apply to ourselves as business owners, or even if we're not owning a business, we're working at a company, we're got a 9 to 5, or if we want to hop into entrepreneurship, it's about making those conscious decisions and knowing that you're the only one who can make those choices. Outside forces, other people can cause things to happen, but it's how you react to it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we've all been conditioned by somebody else, but we're also conditioning ourselves on a daily basis. And whatever conditioning currently lives in us, that's created the habits that now decide our actions, we can change that mechanism by reconditioning ourselves. And so, yeah, I can blame my upbringing or my childhood or events in my life and the conditioning that went along with that. Or I can accept it, embrace it, and say, I'm just going to recondition myself. And it won't be easy. Creating habits, as we know, is, I've heard anywhere from 21 to 90 days to create a habit. I think it all depends on how difficult the habit is, or how ingrained the old one is you're trying to adjust. But it's really just about how committed are you to where you really want to get. I think one of the things that I hear a lot is, I wish I could be, and then followed by a great golfer, a great basketball player, or a movie star, or a country singer, or whatever it is. And contrary to what Walt Disney has got us all believing, wishes do not come true. It's whatever we're willing to commit to and put the money and time and energy into. And that gets us, that moves the needle. And so, but that starts with reconditioning maybe some things that we're already doing that are getting in the way in our own heads.
So what would be an example of, you mentioned reconditioning your mind or reconditioning yourself. What would be an example of something that would need reconditioning? Is that just a simple negative type of thinking, or is it like expound upon that for me a little bit?
Yeah, I think it could be a simple, a great analogy, because a lot of us, at least at one time in our life or another, have wanted to lose weight. And so a great analogy for me of reconditioning my line of thinking is, I wish I could lose weight. And you're saying that as you're eating a bag of Cheetos. So you really don't wish you could lose weight. You want to talk about losing weight because you've conditioned yourself to believe that you need that snack, or you need that thing, or that you can't work out because you don't have time, or whatever your excuse is. So reconditioning starts by having a positive affirmation that I am at a specific weight, or I am physically fit, or I weigh a certain weight that you don't currently weigh, but you're trying to get to. And then starting to create the conditioning of, I am an athlete. I am a fit person. I am a healthy person. And when you start to recondition your mind to think positively about who you are, that makes you become that person. Because most of us think negatively about who we are and talk about how we're overweight or out of shape or those kind of things. And our subconscious mind just helps us stay. Or another one a lot of people say is, there's never enough money at the end of the month. And as long as you continue to say that, it's going to continue to be true. So that conditioning, that negative self-talk, again, studies say up to 80% of the time when we self-talk, we're talking negative. So the biggest reconditioning that we can do is block that negative self-talk and replace it with something positive.
When you recondition your mind to say the positive version of it, like, I will start this business. In 2 years, I will be a successful business owner, as just an example. It forces your mind to work backwards and be like, okay, if I'm going to be a successful business owner in 24 months, how do I get there?
What you just said there, what's step number one? Because we can all set the goal. We can all make the New Year's resolution. We can all make the statement. But what's the plan? How am I going to get there from here? And so in my military service, if the commander above me just gives me the desired end state, take the hill. That's the desired end state. I can't just go, okay, everybody, take the hill. There's got to be step 1, step 2, through step 50, whatever it is. Or in our world, we had what we called battle drills. And battle drills were, what do we do if? And so if we have a convoy out on the road and they come across an IED or indirect fire, what do we do? What's the battle drill? You literally open up a book and there's 15 steps or 20 steps of exactly what we do to try to save soldiers' lives and get out of there successfully. We need to be as diligent with our own lives. If I say in 24 months, I'm going to be a successful business owner, okay, what's step 1? Develop a business plan. What's step 2? And laying out the steps. So just like you said, how do I take action on what I'm saying I'm going to become or what I'm going to accomplish? Not having action steps is planning to fail.
I'm glad you brought up the military in this, because that's where I kind of wanted to take this. Was this mindset, the ability, and maybe you were born with it. I don't know about you personally, Mike. Maybe you were born with the positive mindset and learning it as you grew up. But was it the military? Did they have? Part of me feels like this has to be a natural trait, or at least a trait that can be learned by soldiers. Because when you're out there in the heat of battle, I can't relate, but I can imagine being out there in action. You have to have that positive attitude and positive mindset, because it seems to me, if you don't have it even for a split second, that could be deadly.
Yeah, I absolutely believe you can learn a positive mindset, because we have learned a negative mindset. If you have a negative mindset currently, you've been conditioned for that. You've been taught to believe that the world is out to get you, or that there's a cloud hanging over your head, raining on you and nobody else all the time. Those are learned behaviors and learned things. And I believe we can unlearn those and learn new things. And it's really how high are the stakes. And so I always tell people, when you're on the battlefield and lives are on the line, the stakes are pretty high, right? They're as high as they're ever going to be. Living where excellence is your average, believing that you absolutely can, having that positive mindset is incredibly important. But think about what you're doing right now. You're raising 3, just about to be 4 children. Those stakes are as high, if not higher. And you're going to do that for 20 or 30 years, whatever it's going to take, maybe 30 years to get that last one out of the house, Brien. I don't know what to tell you, but it could happen. So those stakes are really high too, maybe higher than even being on the battlefield. And so it's not about, I'm going to wait till it's situational. We're all dealing with something where, if you're going to give me your time, the most important resource you have, we should be wanting to do that at a level where excellence is our average, and be so passionate about it that we're willing to invest our time. That having that positive mindset and being our best self is so important, no matter what it is. And it's reconditionable if you want it to be, and you really are willing to make the commitment. And it really boils down to that. Are you willing to do what it takes to get there, just like everything else in life?
Well, and it kind of seems like that positivity, that reconditioning and ingraining that trait in oneself is, even if things aren't going well for you, maybe you do have a rain cloud that's pouring on you, maybe you're buried in debt, or you're stuck at a dead-end job, you're scared to take a leap to do your own thing, or you've got 3 kids and you've got whatever. We all have our problems. What is it about that positive trait that is going to, will it beget that success? If you can commit to yourself to staying positive and condition yourself in that way, is it one of those where you end up with a belief in yourself that things just can't end poorly? And you're going to keep working towards the ability to do that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's because some people would equate a positive mindset or a positive attitude with being an eternal optimist and not being a realist. And so I want to be very clear that you can be very optimistic and still be realistic. And so my thing is, life's going to come at me. I have definitely had my share of challenges. I grew up in a home where we didn't have any money and life was hard. And I had a father that was an alcoholic and wasn't always super positive, because he would get in a dark place sometimes. And so I wasn't raised with a model of continuous positivity, but I was raised with a positive role model. Having those things happen in our life, again, it's not, being an optimist doesn't mean I don't believe bad things are going to happen. I absolutely know bad things are going to happen. We've either gone through something, we're going through something, or we will go through something. That's a fact. It's a fact of life. It's how I choose to go through those things. I have a good friend that says, you have to go through something to become something. And I believe that to be 100% true. The more you go through, the better you become if you go through it with the right mindset. It can be crushing. It can be very crushing. And with the wrong mindset, you can stay in that very dark place. It's absolutely okay to get knocked down. In fact, I can guarantee you're going to get knocked down. It's just not okay to stay down. So it's getting back up and getting back after it in whatever we're pursuing. And then building those people around you that can help you do that. The other thing I learned in the military, no matter how much rank I had, no matter how many people I was in charge of, I was not leading alone. I would have never been able to do that. The first thing you need to do is build that team around you that will be honest with you, tell you when you're doing the right thing, tell you when they don't think you're doing the right thing, and then support you in whatever it is you need to do to accomplish the mission.
I think that's a perfect example, because it's one thing, even if you're a solopreneur, like everything is up to you. But there's outlets, like there's friends or family or other people in your business network who can tell you that, hey, I don't know if that's such a great product to offer. Maybe your service could be improved in this manner. So it's being able to take that criticism and almost like you said, lead together, right? Take that feedback and improve upon yourself. I wanted to ask you, with all your experience in the military and taking the leap into entrepreneurship. So when you got into the franchising model with Massage Envy, what was it like for you in your mindset? Was it a scary type of endeavor? I know it's not inexpensive to get into franchising a lot of the time, depending on the avenue you take. But for you, was that, in your mind, was that a huge leap that was very different from anything you've done in the past?
It was. I mentioned I joined the National Guard. In the first 14 years I was in, I served part-time 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. And I had started out in the banking industry, and I worked in that for a few years. I was also, and that's a whole nother story for another time, but I was also an elected official at the age of 22 as a city commissioner. And through that exposure, saw an opportunity to start a business when I was 25 years old. And I started a human resource and labor relations consulting firm. So my first venture into the entrepreneurial world was in that Oster consulting business. And that was great. And I was having some success in what we were doing. And we were working mostly with cities and counties and small businesses. And it was HR before HR was HR. And this was back in the mid 90s. And had an opportunity to go full-time for what I thought was going to be a couple of years working for our then Adjutant General. So I stepped away from that. I had a couple of people running it for me. And in the 2 years that I was working for him, 9/11 happened. And when that happened, it created deployment opportunities for me. And the longer I was away from that business back then, the harder it was to keep it afloat and come back to it. And so I made a commitment to stay for 20 years of active duty in the National Guard. And then at the end of that came back out and then repurposed what I was doing on the entrepreneurial side. But that was all small business, self-employed, do your own thing. Leaping into a franchise in a several $100,000 build out and a 10-year lease and commitment to those kind of things, very different. And for a guy that's walking away from a career where I was going to have a nice pension and that just wasn't how I was built or who I was. I put all that on hold to do my military because I felt called to do that. So I was excited to get back into it, but, scared. And of course, my wife and I would jumped into that together. So you got to have if you're married, you need to be jointly invested and believe that you can do that. And even as a solopreneur, as you're saying, I think instead of a board of directors, which you may have in a corporation, you need a board of believers. The people that, and not believe in what you're doing, but believe in you. And if they believe in you, then they're going to be honest with you. And because you have to have somebody that will be honest with you, that you can vet certain ideas through, because sometimes not every idea, as you know, is a great idea. And sometimes you need to be called out and realism has to set in. And so I truly believe you have to have that board of believers, your cheerleader, whatever it is, the people around you know and can trust and that you love and that love you, that you can talk to about certain things.
Right. It's kind of like having those soldiers with you, right? Like they're your brothers and sisters who can tell you when you're in the right or tell you when you're in the wrong or help you find the better way to get something achieved and providing that ultimate confidence. In my journey personally, I waited way too long to seek out mentorship and coaching. And in the last year and a half, it's made a huge difference, not just in my business, but in my life, because I've more closely centered myself around people who have been there, who have done that, and who are willing to teach younger people like me how to do it and how to do it the right way and how to avoid the potholes. In terms of positive attitude, what role did gratitude play for you when it comes to reaching that next level, whether it's in the military or in your other business ventures? Yeah,
to me, gratitude is absolutely huge. In fact, as our kids were growing up, and I didn't do this with the older ones because it wasn't a thing that I was really exposed to or had found at that time. But with my younger two, in particular, our youngest one, who seemed like, when he was going through school and so your fourth kid, right? I mean, the first one you've got 1 million pictures of, the second one you've got 500,000 pictures of, the third one you've got a few pictures of, and then the fourth one you don't even really know their name. I mean, that's just how it goes. And so we didn't have a stronger relationship. When you try to have a conversation, it wasn't always in a positive way or whatever. And so we started this thing called 3GTs, or 3 great things that happened that day. So that daily gratitude. And so he would come home and we'd get that, hey, how was your day? And we'd get the grunt, which is how they respond when they're 14, 15 years old. And he'd start to go around the corner to go downstairs. And I'd be like, before you go downstairs, because that would be the last time we'd see him, what are your 3GTs? And of course, he'd roll his eyes and he'd come over and begrudgingly sit down and start talking about them. But by the time he was done telling me 3 great things that happened to him that day, he was smiling. We were having a great conversation. And so watching what that did for him just reinforced to me that it's just not about having somebody else do it. It's about doing it yourself as well. Because there are always 3 great things that happen in any day. I don't care how hard the day is. There's 3 great things. Some of it is I was able to get out of bed and I'm still here at the end of the day. That might be 2, and you have to find 1 more because some days are really hard. But it's that self-reflection of deciding to see things in a positive light because they're out there for us. So to me, gratitude is incredibly important, and doing that daily journaling or reminding yourself of those great things, that also goes hand in hand with appreciation. As a military person serving in the time that I did, the appreciation we received and still receive is unbelievable. Every time I tell somebody that I served, they always thank me for my service. It hasn't always been that way in this country, but it is now. And I've been blessed to serve in a time where it was like that. So it hasn't been lost on me how that made me feel to receive it, but it took me a while to realize that it's even better to give it. I tell people all the time, it's great to give appreciation on a normal day, but if you're having a bad day and you can figure out a way to show somebody else appreciation, that will boost you so far up and bring you out of such a bad place just by looking for something positive somebody else is doing, seeing it, and then recognizing it with them. It's incredibly powerful. So gratitude and appreciation, to me, 2 very huge components of living a positive life where excellence is your average.
That's made a huge difference in my life. My grandpa, who passed away years ago, left us a list of 10 things to live a good life. And one of them was, if it'll make their day, say it. I try to embody that as best as I can throughout the days, even when I'm having a bad day. If it's going to make their day, say it. You get up and your wife or your husband are looking particularly great that day, say, hey, you look great today. We were chatting a little bit about how you took that leap into entrepreneurship. What was it about your mindset that allowed you to do that? Like you said, like taking on a 10-year lease, like even if you've been wildly successful in business or the cash is abundant, like that's still a huge commitment. What is it that flipped in that switch in your mind where you're like, we can do this, like this is doable? Was that always harkening back to just having that positive mindset and working backwards? Or was it kind of one of those things where you're like, I've always wanted to do it, I just got to do it?
There's certainly an art to it where you have to be excited about it, and you do that. You say, I've always wanted to do this. I'm going to do it. That's the art of it. But you also have to employ the science. And that's the due diligence of, do the demographics work? Does the location work? Can I get the therapist that I need? Can I find a manager? What's the payroll going to be? And so while I think you have to make the leap on something and you have to be willing to do that, you're more able to do that if you've done the research and made the commitment to get to where you need to be. And then you can do it. It's still going to be scary, but not as scary. And you're going to be more committed and able to get through hard days because the science tells you that it'll work. I liken it to the fact that when I was a kid, my grandmother gave piano lessons. So, of course, we got free piano lessons from my grandmother. I didn't want to play the piano. Now I wish I had done what I was supposed to do. But every year she would have a piano recital. And every year I was terrified to go to the recital. And she would tell me, you're only scared because you're not prepared. And I thought, that's just silly. I don't even know what that means, right? But it was because I hadn't done what I needed to do to be ready to make that leap and go do the recital. And I believe the same is true in this entrepreneurial adventure, is if you've done the things you're supposed to do, taken the steps necessary, done the research, if you're prepared and you have things lined up, then you're ready to take the leap. And if you're not doing those things, you have to start asking yourself, why am I not doing those things? Is it the wrong thing that I'm trying to leap for? Do I have a fear of something that I am creating in my own mind? Or is there a reason that idea won't work and I should move on to the next thing? And so that research will get you an answer to one of those 3 reasons that you're not doing what you're saying you want to do.
I'm a big Bengals fan here in Cincinnati. So Joe Burrow always says, I win the game on Thursday. I just play it on Sunday, because he's prepared every week by Thursday. I think it's pertinent to anybody owning a business. You don't have to be the all-star quarterback of the Bengals to believe that.
Jack Nicklaus win the golf tournament on his way to the golf tournament because he would mentally play it and he would prepare for it. And so I completely agree. When I was getting ready to deploy the second time, I was going as a battalion commander, and I knew I was going to have 1,000 to 1,200 soldiers under my command. And the thought of going over there and doing something wrong or making a mistake or not being ready, that would cost somebody their life, and then having to write that letter home to a parent or, whatever that was going to entail, that was hard for me. I mean, I'm a kid from a small town in South Dakota. I never really thought I was going to be leading soldiers in combat. And here I am getting this tremendous opportunity and tremendous responsibility. And so I went to a mentor of mine and I said, how do you ever get yourself in a place where if that bad thing happens, you can live with it? And his response to me was, all that you can do is all that you can do, which essentially means if you prepare and you do everything you possibly can to get ready, you just have to remember that the enemy gets a vote. And that's not just true in combat and battle. That's true in life. But you should be doing everything you can possibly do to try to win, and then be prepared for the enemy jumping up and getting a vote and be able to react to that. But if you prepare and do all that you can do, you're going to be able to overcome when the enemy jumps in, because it's going to happen. And it's happened to us in our small business. Pat said something to the effect of, an 80% plan violently executed today is better than a perfect plan executed too late. And I do believe there's something to be said for that too. If you're just standing around and you're looking for perfection, you're not going to get there. And that's just procrastination. It's perfection procrastination is what I call it. Get to an 80% solution and start. And once you start, you'll start to be able to make course corrections. That's why you don't just set a course on a plane and it just flies a straight line. It's constantly correcting all the way to its destination. And entrepreneurship is the exact same way. You start out on a journey in a direction, and as life comes at you, or, as Mike Tyson said, you get punched in the mouth, you adjust. You dodge, you bob, you weave, you do whatever you got to do, and you fight through it. And that's half the fun, though. If it was just a straight line, and, I'm a motorcycle rider, and the worst place to ride a motorcycle is down a straight highway. Give me some curves and hills and scenery. And the entrepreneurial journey is the same way. I don't want a straight line to victory. I want to earn it. It's so much more fun, enjoyable, and you get so much reward out of it when there's some challenges along the way. It's like anything else. If it's easy, everybody'd be doing it. It's not easy, but the reward is incredible. It's the case of the one size, right? I'll do it once or I'll do it once I've done this, or once I've done that, or once I get more money, or once the kids are gone, or once I get the house paid off. And it really is not about that. It's maybe you can't go in 100% right now, but it's sort of like on my military journey. When I was serving active duty in the military, I was buying real estate on the side and doing some other things. I was doing some public speaking on the side. Of course, I was not doing it on the government's dime or the government's time, but you can do those things, and you can dabble in them and start to build the things that you knew. All that research and that due diligence, that can be done while you're still working a full-time job, and you can keep that income source while you're doing some of those other things. What it really boils down to is, are you using your time the most effective way that you can? Because that's the number one thing when people say, well, I want to, but I don't have time. And I usually tell them that I believe you have the time, you just haven't made it a priority. Because if you structure every day and if you started acting like an attorney and you started tracking every 15 minutes of the day, because that's how they bill us, right? They track every 15. If we started tracking every 15 minutes of our day, I think people would be mind blown of how much of their day could be repurposed to chase this entrepreneurial dream. Because right now, they're not using it. And so that's the big thing. Is it a priority? And if it's not a priority, then maybe it's not the right dream or not the right place for you to be going. If you can make it a priority, you can start to reallocate the time, then using that positive mindset to believe you can actually get there. And there's science about the subconscious mind and that positive self-talk. If you start telling yourself you're there, your subconscious mind will start helping you find ways to get there. Instead of that negative self-talk, your subconscious mind is helping you not get there. And so I'm going to use my self-conscious or my subconscious mind for good instead of evil. I want to be the hero in the comic book, not the villain. And so I try to positive self-talk. That negative self-talk is in there. That voice is in there. And so sometimes we got to block them and come back with some positivity. But yeah, that's the key. That positive self-talk, believing I can get there, making it a priority, using my time for good, are all things to get us going in that entrepreneurial direction. If you want to gain 7 hours a week of time, go to bed an hour earlier and get up an hour earlier, because that extra hour in the morning is almost always productive. But that last hour of the night is almost never productive. Shifting that one thing can gain you 7 hours a week. It's a matter of priorities, principles, and positivity.
I love it. Mike, we're getting near the end of our time together here. I want to, if we could leave our listeners with, I hope I don't go too broad here, but the number one thing that you want to impart today, I think you've imparted a ton of things today, but a lot of our listeners are either young stage business owners, entrepreneurs, or they have plans to become one, or maybe you're in the dream stage, you're dreaming of becoming a business owner. What is the number one piece of advice that you can give, putting a bow on everything we discussed today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, if I think back to who I was and how I was when I was maybe in the 30s and 40s and trying to do these things, the number one thing I would say is figure out a way to believe that you can actually be your best self. Because your best self is good enough to do the things you're talking about doing, but it's hard for us to bring our best self every single day and truly believe in ourselves. That negative self-talk, the imposter syndrome, the things that get in our way are usually internal, not external. And so finding a way that I can believe in my best self every single day and reminding yourself that living in excellence or living where excellence is your average is your level of excellence. It's not somebody else's. You're not competing against everybody else. You're competing against you. And so if you're spending 4 hours a day gaming, that's probably not living in excellence unless you're gaming professionally. You're probably wasting time. So if you start to change and shift and say, I'm going to cut that in half, then you're starting to live in a level of excellence that's pertinent to you. Because people will ask me sometimes, isn't that a lot of pressure to try to live at excellence? No, it's your level of excellence. And of course, it will shift over time. So believe you can actually be your best self. That's the first step to becoming your best self. And if you do that, you will be successful in the journey that you're taking on.
It's beautiful. I love it. Mike, thank you for sharing all your information, all your knowledge. And again, thank you for your service. That means a lot to all of us here in the States. We always appreciate it. I want to make sure that our listeners can show you some love or check you out online. You mentioned you wrote a book. What's the title of your book and where can we all find you online?
Yeah, so the book is It Starts With Attitude. You can find the paperback version on Amazon, and you can find the Audible version now on Audible. Just published, actually. And so I'm excited to have that out on Audible finally. And then MikeOster.com if they want to learn more about me. And then there's an opportunity for them. We're just getting ready to kick off our first group coaching session called Journey in Excellence. So they can go to journeyinexcellence.com and learn more about that as well.
Awesome. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure. We wish you the best and thank you for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity.
I want to thank Mike for joining us today. I think he really helped provide some insight into the major effects that being positive with ourselves can have on ourselves as individuals and our businesses. Thank you all for joining us today on the Millionaire University Podcast. Hit us up on all the social networks or shoot us a note at support@millionaireuniversity.com. We always look forward to hearing from you. This is Brien Gearin signing off. We will catch you next time on the Millionaire University Podcast.